coal mining areas of West Virginia, there to learn firsthand from the miners some of their problems, and there to answer their questions. Senator Kennedy at Slab Fork Mine in Raleigh County, where a coal miner has just asked him,
what are your plans if elected president for the situation existing in the coal mines in West Virginia?
Well, I think that, and I've been in the Congress now for 14 years, and the fact is that in my own state of Massachusetts, we've had a similar problem because we've lost all our textile industry. And the same problem which has hit West Virginia, which is the loss of employment in the mines. I think there are at least 4 or 5 things the government can do. First is the area redevelopment bill, which I floor managed on the first time it passed the Senate, which permits the credit of the federal government to be loaned to new businesses coming in, new industries coming in, which can provide for fresh water for communities, which can provide for vocational training, extra unemployment compensation, and all the rest. The second, I think, is the coal research bill, which provides for new uses for coal. Thirdly, and I had a chance to talk to some of the active members of the union the other day, a good many of these countries, particularly now France and Germany, where you could ship American coal over there and sell it cheaper, they refuse to take it in. They put up trade barriers against it, particularly in Germany. I think that we can persuade them, and I think that the State Department and the influence of the presidency has to be used to persuade them to accept American coal. We buy a good many things from them. They have to at least be willing to buy, particularly in an industry which is so hard hit. Then I think that we can also provide federal aid to education and all the things which can bring a good deal of assistance into the state.
Well, what do you think about so much help going to the foreign countries instead of being given to the United States in the depressed areas?
Well, now, one of the things which we send abroad is surplus food. I've been the sponsor, some of the other senators sponsored a food stamp bill. One of the things which I sponsored was to take it out of the Department of Agriculture and put it in the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. A lot of this food which comes down to West Virginia, it's badly distributed. The diet is bad. They ought to add milk, eggs, butter, and chickens and all the rest, so that these people who are older and who have not been able to find a job, if they're going to receive assistance, it ought to be assistance they can use. I would say that perhaps the most beneficial thing immediately we can do, even more than the others, the government puts out billions of dollars of defense contracts. Up to 1953, under the Truman administration, they would set aside some of these contracts to go to those areas where there was unemployment. Now, I think that program should be renewed. In other words, for every contract let, a certain percentage of it would be set aside, and they would buy from those areas which had high unemployment. I think all those things, coupled with the action which you can take in the state, I think they can make a difference to West Virginia. I think this election is important for this reason. I think many others. I think another thing they can do, which is all of you contribute to Social Security. Now, if we can pass the Ferran bill, which provides that you can contribute during your working years, and when you're over 65, you'll receive assistance from the fund in the payment of your medical bills. I must say, I don't think we ought to wait another year on that one, because I think we can pass it this year, particularly in the Senate.
This Social Security, if they give a man enough to live on, they don't give enough for a man to survive on. $100 a month ain't enough.
Well, as a matter of fact, the average benefit's only $72 a month, which is less than $20 a week. You can't get decent housing, and you can't get medical, and you can't pay for food out of $20 a week.
Well, they ought to get that down to 60 years.
Yeah, well, I think what they ought to do, first place, they got it down to 62 for women, but they've only, if you're disabled under 50, for example, you don't get any Social Security. I think they ought to make that go lower. Then I think that they ought to, particularly in those areas where there's a good deal of depression and where there's unemployment, I think they ought to start the Social Security at a lower age for the men. If you're working, of course, you don't care about retiring at 60. I'd much rather work between 60 and 65 and get a lot more money than I would be to have to live on Social Security checks. But for anybody in an area where you can't get a job and where you're chronically unemployed, I think that they ought to help them.
There it is. Senator Kennedy bringing you issues of this presidential campaign as they affect West Virginia, as they affect you.